Hey everyone, how we doing today? This is James Sweeney, aka SplitSuit, and welcome back to another video. And as part of the Ask SplitSuit a Question series, a bunch of people asked hand history questions. This one actually came privately via email, and Brandon just wants me to review this spot from 10 to limit zoom. So let's check it out. Okay, so in this hand, we're in the big blind with pocket queens. There's a raise from under the gun, folds to us. We decide to 3-bet, and love the fact that we're 3-betting. Size is totally okay. Let's rock and roll from here. End up getting called, and because this is Zoom, we have no HUD stats or other information, so we're just kind of dig this out as we would against a default player, and we end up going here, and here decides to check. Now, Brandon says he can't ask for much more than this flop. He's noticed that at Zoom at this stake, people tend to bet a lot of their range and 3-bet pots would check to. Totally fair. And he said he hated the idea of losing value by not c-betting, but he wanted to stack any ace-x, and he wanted to give any underpair the chance to continue. So I totally hear that. I totally understand that. But the thing is you mentioned in there that you want to stack ace-x. And I'd ask, how is checking the best way to stack ace-x? Because let's say we check and he bets like a buck, and what are we going to do? Check call down? Are we going to check raise? Are we going to check call donk later? It's kind of awkward. And I would just say this. If he has ace-x, we can stack him anyway. Bet the flop for like $1.40, bet the turn, rest in on the river, you're good to go. Right? It's not too difficult to get stacks inside at only 4.5 SPR. So I'm not worried about that. And I love the fact that we have middle set as opposed to top set because now there are a lot of ace-x type hands available. So I don't really love checking, and I understand your point as far as trying to get value from underpairs, but here's the truth of the matter. It's a texture where maybe you make one bet from an underpair, like pocket sixes or something, but that's probably about it. And if he ever starts getting like slow play with like ace-x, or he just would have gladly called a couple of streets with tens but wouldn't bet when checked to, and we have no information to lead us one way or the other, I just can't assume that I'm going to make that much more money by checking. So because of that, I just bet and fire at him. And I do expect to get a decent amount of continuance, whether that's a float, whether that's ace-x getting sticky, whether that's pocket tens peeling off for one street, I don't know. I just expect to get enough value to totally make betting be the default here. So I don't get into this tricky try to check stuff. Just keep your aggression up, just bet it out for something like $1.30 or $1.40 and just go from there. So we do end up checking, we do end up inducing a bet, but it's only a 51-cent bet, and now things are a little bit weird. So at this point, Brandon decides to call. He says he perceives the 51-cent bet as weak, and he calls with intentions of betting 2/3 on most turns. Okay, I definitely agree. I definitely view this bet as weak as well. Quarter pot is usually going to be a pretty weak bet, and this is just one of those situations where I don't really like any line. I don't really love check raising. I don't really love check calling. Definitely never ever gonna check fold. So it's just one of those where like I don't like any response to this. I don't mind betting 2/3 on turns. You can bet $2 there, rest in on the river, and it works. But again, all this really boils back to the fact that I wouldn't have checked the flop in the first place, so I never really have to encounter this. That being said, the 51-cent bet is definitely super atypical, but I just really don't find myself in this spot. So King of Hearts on the turn, Brandon decides to change his mind and says that he feels that because it is the King of Hearts that this card is going to get bet by villain a lot of the time. I don't really think that we can say that. I'm not 100% sure why we're saying that. I mean, sure, he could bet it sometimes, but, if you look at your 3-bet and then check call on the flop, I mean, you're kind of all over this board. Right, and definitely not thinking you have like a tremendous amount of sets, though you could have a set of kings, but like you're gonna have things like king queen and maybe like ace jack type hands. Like you're gonna have stuff that's on this board, so I don't really think you're gonna induce too many bluffs here. So I kind of disagree that we're gonna get a tremendous amount of value from early position betting a super wide range here. Maybe he does, but I'm not really confident that that's going to be the case. But in this situation, instead of facing a normal bet, we actually end up facing a shove, which is obviously a little bit weird. Now, in this situation, Brandon says that he's never going to fold. He doesn't expect that this person's going to have like aces or kings or jack 10 very often. And I would agree with that. I mean, sure, I really heavily discount like aces and kings. I don't think that's getting flatted pre-flop a ton of the time at this limit. And sure, there could be some jack 10, but if it's jack 10, it's probably suited, which puts 4 combos of it, so I don't really care. And he could definitely be overvaluing things like ace king, king queen, ace queen. I think I just said that, but those kind of things. So this is just one of those where, yeah, I'm just never going to fold. I'm just going to pick this off and rock and roll and go from there and feel very comfortable about it. And in this situation, he ends up having a flush draw that he picked up on the turn and shelled with, and obviously we held, which is nice to happen every now and then. But again, the main point of this hand isn't really the result. It isn't really even the turn when you're facing the shove. It's really more thinking about the flop and do you want to bet it or not. And here's the truth of the matter. You're going to bet that flop, and a decent chunk of the time, or at least a very non-zero percentage of the time, you're going to get no action. And whatever. You're also going to bluff that board when you have air. So it's one of those where, like, sure, you happen to have a set this time, but it's not going to, like, deter me from betting it. Because when he has something, he's going to get super sticky. When he doesn't, he's going to fold, but I probably wasn't going to make much from that anyway. So I'd rather force him to make some big calling mistakes than try to get like one bluff mistake from him occasionally. That's usually going to be much more beneficial. So Brandon, thanks for the great hand, and if you or anyone else has a poker-related hand or question, feel free to leave it on our Google Plus page. Leave a link for that in the description box, and also please make sure to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this type of video. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to let me know. Otherwise, good luck out there, and happy grinding.